All right. So it's Wilson, and we are back with chapter 1 of Stamped Racism, Anti-Racism, and You. I hope you guys enjoyed the introduction. It was, I was really excited with that read, as you can tell. I might be as excited or more excited with this read. We shall see. There are a few words that I may mispronounce as I am reading this text. If you know how to pronounce it, please let me know. Next class, I did try to make sure I knew how to pronounce all the words, but there may be a few, and that's okay. That doesn't stop me from reading. It should not stop you from reading. We read because we love to read, we love to learn, and it's okay if we mispronounce. We can learn how to pronounce them correctly. So we are in chapter 1. You're going to open your book, follow along. This is starting on page 1. If you have your ebook open, you can go ahead and open that up, follow along, and it should be exciting. Now remember, we are going to need something to write with, all right, or something to type with, and keep an open mind, all right? We're going to question the text as we read. We're always going to question the text, all right? Great scholars, great thinkers, great people always question the knowledge that they are receiving, all right? So let's start. The story of the world's first racist. Already the title. Before we begin, let's get something right. Let's get something straight. This is not a history book. I repeat, this is not a history book. At least not like the ones you're used to reading in school. The ones that feel more like a list of dates. There will be some, with an occasional war here and there, a declaration, definitely got to mention that, a constitution, that too, a court case or two, and of course, the paragraph that's read during Black History Month. Harriet, Rosa, Martin. This isn't it. This isn't a history book, or at least it's not that kind of history book. Instead, what this is a book that contains history. A book that contains history. I wonder what the difference is. A history directly connected to our lives as we live them right this minute. This is a present book, a book about the here and now, a book that hopefully will help us better understand why we are where we are as Americans, specifically as our identity pertains to race. Uh-oh, the R word, which for many of us still feels rated R, or can be matched only with another R word, run. But don't. Let's all take a deep breath. Inhale, hold it, exhale, and breathe out. R, A, C, E. See? Not so bad. Except for the fact that race has been a strange and persistent poison in American history, which I'm sure you already know. I'm also sure that depending on where you are and where you've grown up, your experiences with it, or at least the moment in which you recognize it, may vary. Some may believe race isn't an issue anymore, that it's a thing of the past, old tales of bad times. Others may be certain that race is like an alligator, a dinosaur that never went extinct, but instead evolved. And though hiding in murky swamp waters, that leftover monster is still deadly. And then there are those who know that race and, more critical, racism is everywhere. Those of you who see racism regularly robbing people of liberty, whether as a violent stick-up or as a sly pickpocket, the thief known as racism is all around. This book, this not history book, this present book, is meant to take you on a race journey from then to now, to show you why we feel how we feel, We feel, to show why we feel how we feel, why we live how we live, and why this poison, whether recognizable or unrecognizable, whether it's a scream or a whisper, just won't go away. Oh, Wilson had another moment. I had another moment. I actually had a lot of moments while reading this little piece, but I'm going to go back to this one right here. Oh. Okay. The thief known as racism is all around. Ooh, put that imagery in your mind. The thief known as racism is all around. This book, this not history book, this present book is meant to take you on a race journey from then to now, to show you why we feel how we feel, why we live how we live, and why this poison, whether recognizable or unrecognizable, whether it's a scream or a whisper, just won't go away. Oh, Tupac was in my head. If y'all know Tupac, you know Tupac, all right? Oh, he was in my head reading that line. This isn't the be all end all. This isn't the whole meal. It's more like an appetizer, something in preparation for the feast to come, something to get you excited about choosing your seat, the right seat at the table. Oh, and there are 3 words I want you to keep in mind. Do y'all remember those words? 3 words to describe the people we'll be exploring: segregationist, assimilationist, and anti-racist. These are serious definitions. There are serious definitions of these things, but I'm going to give you mine. Pen, paper, tablet, computer, whatever you got, let's get it out. Segregationists are haters, like real haters, people who hate you for not being like them. Assimilationists are people who like you, but only with quotation marks, like you, meaning they like you because you're like them. And then there are anti-racists. They love you because you're like you. But it's important to note, life can rarely be wrapped into a single word description. It isn't neat and perfectly shaped. So sometimes, over the course of a lifetime, and even over the course of a day, people can take on and act out ideas represented by more than one of these 3 identities. Can be both and. Just keep that in mind as we explore these folks. And actually, these aren't just the words we'll be using to describe the people in this book. They're also the words we'll be using to describe you and me, all of us. So where do we start? We might as well jump in and begin with the world's first racist. I know you're thinking, how could anyone know who the world's first racist is or was? Or you're thinking, yeah, tell us so we can find out where he lives. Well, he's dead. Been dead for 600 years, thankfully. And before I tell you about him, I have to give you a little context. Pause. Context. You've been learning about history for a long time by this point. What is context? Okay? What did we teach you context was? Think about what context is so you know what he's about to say. He's going to give you a little context about this dude that's been dead for 600 years. All right? So you might be going back into your class if you're, you might be going back to global, trying to think about who he could be thinking about, setting up that knowledge that you already know. All right? Getting that ready, activating prior knowledge. That's what we call that. That's what you should be getting ready to do now. Europe. That's where we are. Told you last time. Visualize Europe. Okay? Europe. That's where we are, where he was. As I'm sure you've learned by now, the Europeans, Italians, Portuguese, Spanish, Dutch, French, British, were conquering everyone, because if there's one thing all of history books do say, it's that Europeans conquered the majority of the world. Let that sit in your mind for a minute. Europeans conquered the majority of the world. The year is 1415, and Prince Henry, There's always a Prince Henry. Convinced his father, King John of Portugal, to basically pull a caper and capture the main Muslim trading depot on the northeastern tip of Morocco. Oh, we got a lot to put in our brain. Prince Henry told his father, hey, let's go over there and get this trade spot in northeast Morocco, okay? The northeastern tip of Morocco. Why? Simple. Prince Henry was jealous. The Muslim had riches. And if Prince Henry could get the Muslims out of the way, then those riches and resources could be easily accessed, stolen, a jack move, a robbery, plain and simple. The take, a bountiful supply of gold and Africans. That's right, the Portuguese were capturing Moorish people who would become prisoners of war in a war the Moors hadn't planned on fighting, but had to survive. And by prisoners, I mean property, human property. But neither Prince Henry nor King John of Portugal was given the title world's first racist. Because the truth is, capturing people wasn't an unusual thing back then. Just a fact of life. Harsh, but true. The illustrious moniker would go to a man named neither Henry nor John, but something way more awesome, who did something not awesome at all. Gomez Eanes de Zurara. Zurara, which sounds like a cheerleader chant, did just that. Cheerleaded, cheerled, whatever. He was a cheerleader, kinda. Not the kind who roots for a team and pumps up a crowd, but he was a man who made sure the team he played for was represented and heralded as great. He made sure Prince Henry was looked at as a brilliant quarterback making ingenious plays, and that every touchdown was the mark of a superior player. How did Zurara do this? Through literature, storytelling. He wrote the story, a biography of the life and slave trading of Prince Henry. Zurara was an obedient commander in Prince Henry's military order of Christ and would eventually complete his book, which would become the first defense of African slave trading. I'm gonna pause for a minute because I don't think I said this, but in the last video, I was noting that whenever we have places or names, events, we try to write those down in our notes, okay? So we've mentioned Prince Henry, all right? We mentioned his father, King John of Portugal already, all right? We've mentioned Morocco and Europe. So we want to write those things down in our notebooks, all right? And try to write them chronologically as you're reading so that it helps jog your brain about what you're reading. So now we're on Prince Henry, his biographer, which was Gomez Eanes de Zurara. And we're writing Zurara was a commander in Prince Henry's military order of Christ. That's another thing that we're writing down, okay? And when eventually he writes this book, and it was called, we're writing this down too, okay? It was called The Chronicle of the Discovery and Conquest of Guinea. In it, Zurara bragged about the Portuguese being early in bringing enslaved Africans from the Western Sahara Cape, and spoke about owning humans as if they were exclusive pairs of sneakers. Again, this was common, but he upped the brag by also explaining what made Portugal different from their European neighbors in terms of slave trading. The Portuguese now saw enslaving people as missionary work, a mission from God to help civilize and Christianize the African savages. At least that's what Zurara claimed. And the reason this was a one-up on his competitors, the Spanish and the Italians, was because they were still enslaving Eastern Europeans, as in white people. Not called white back then, but white people. Zurara's ace, his trick shot, was that the Portuguese had enslaved Africans, of all shades, by the way, supposedly for the purpose of saving their wretched souls. Okay? So Zurara's different than other European conquerors because they're enslaving Africans to save their souls, whereas others were just enslaving others. for work purposes or because they were prisoners of war or those type of things. Zurara made Prince Henry out to be some kind of youth minister canvassing the street, doing community work, when what Prince Henry really was more of a gangster, more of a shakedown man, a kidnapper, getting a commission for bringing the king captives. Prince Henry's cut like a finder's fee, 185 slaves equaling money, 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 though it was always framed as a noble cause, thanks to Zurara, who was also paid for his pen. So he's paid to write this, right? Write this great thing. Oh, you're going out there, you're capturing these Africans and saving their soul. That's what he was writing that Prince Henry was doing. But Prince Henry was making money doing this. Seems like Zurara was just a liar, right? A fiction writer. So what makes him the world's first racist? Well, Zurara was the first person to write about and defend Black human ownership. And his single document began the recorded history of anti-Black racist ideas. You know how the kings are always attached to where they rule, like King John of Portugal. Well, if Gomes Ines de Zurara was the king of anything, which he wasn't, he would have been the King Gomes of racism. Zurara's book, The Chronicle and Discovery and Conquest of Guyana, was a hit. Guyana, I keep saying Guyana, of Guinea, was a hit. And you know what hits do? They spread. Like a pop song that everyone claims to hate, but everyone knows the words to. And then suddenly no one hates the song anymore. And instead, it becomes an anthem. Zurara's book became an anthem. Zurara's book became an anthem. An anthem of what? And you might need to look up what anthem means. A song sung across all of Europe as the primary source of knowledge on unknown Africa and African peoples for the original slave traders and enslavers in Spain, Holland, France, and England. Zurara depicted Africans as savage animals that needed taming. This depiction over time would even begin to convince some African people that they were inferior. Like Al-Hussein ibn Muhammad al-Wazan al-Fassi, a well-educated Moroccan who was on a diplomatic journey along the Mediterranean Sea when he was captured and enslaved. He was eventually freed by Pope Leo X, who converted him to Christianity, renamed him Johannes Leo. He later became known as Leo Africanus or Leo the African, and possibly commissioned him to write a survey of Africa. And in that survey, Africanus echoed Zurara's sentiments of Africans, his own people. He said they were hypersexual savages, making him the first known African racist. When I was growing up, we called this drinking the Kool-Aid or selling out. Either way, Zurara's documentation of the racist idea that Africans needed slavery in order to be fed and taught Jesus, and that this was all ordained by God, began to seep in and stick to the European cultural psyche. And a few hundred years later, this idea would eventually reach America. Okay. So there are a couple things in this reading that you may not have known about, or you might have to go back and look up some words that you may have been unfamiliar with, and some ideas. And this is also kind of like one of those chapters where you might actually have to go back to read it to kind of focus on and understand the chronology of it. What is he saying about Zurara, right? What is this main idea, this main point? What did Zurara do? And if you can't answer that right now in a sentence or two, then you might need to go back and read it, right? What did Zurara do? And I'm on page 6, and I know one thing for sure. Zurara wrote the biography of the life and slave trading of Prince Henry. He was the commander for Prince Henry. The book was called The Chronicle of the Discovery and Conquest of Guinea. All right? And in that book, what did he do? What did he write? What does Kindi say about Zurawa's writing? That's what we want to look at and explore. That seems to be this kind of like main idea in this text, okay? So we're going to take a look. We're either going to go back, read it on our own, or skim through here to kind of find those pieces, all right? What does Zurawa write about Africans that makes him the first racist? What does he write? Take a look at page 6 and on, okay, to answer that question. Remember, we jotted down some keywords that we might want to think about, that we don't know, that we might want to look up. You might not understand what he meant when he said Moorish people. Moorish people. Moniker. What is a moniker? I don't know what a moniker is. It's like a new vocab. Not absolutely necessary to understand the historical parts of this text, but it is a word that we might be unfamiliar with. What was the military order of Christ? All right. Do we know what anthem? Another vocabulary word. Canvassing. What does canvassing mean? All right. Cultural psyche. I've heard or seen that before, but what does he mean by cultural psyche, right? What does he mean when he says that? Either way, Zurawa's documentation of the racist idea that Africans needed slavery in order to be fed and taught Jesus, and that it was all ordained by God, began to seep in and stick to the European cultural psyche. What is a cultural psyche? Okay. And again, if there's some vocabulary words in there that you're not quite sure of, ordained, seep in, look those up too. All right. We have a lot to read when we get, we don't have a lot to read this book, but we have a lot to read to kind of let the story unfold. That's it for chapter 1. I don't know about you, but I want to keep on reading. And I'll be back with chapter 2 pretty soon. Have a great day.